What's up? How's it going? Thad Brown here with you on the Endgame. It is Monday, February the 9th, the day after the Seattle Seahawks have been crowned Super Bowl champions for a second time. We are blue and green in honor of the champion Seahawks in the studio today. We'll talk a lot about the Super Bowl. Who were the winners? What are the things we learned? Are the Patriots frauds? And then also how Bills fans kind of approach this Super Bowl in maybe a little different way that kind of surprised me. In addition, we'll talk a little Olympics, some court storming over the weekend that's getting Duke and North Carolina fans all riled up, and a whole lot more for sure coming up today. Rachel Liebert will be in studio as well to do our weekly Monday segment. You see this to talk about some of those things over the weekend that may have slipped past your attention that got ours, and things that we wanted to talk about that maybe aren't on the beaten path of Western New York sports talk. But of course, got to start with the Super Bowl. And for the most part, I thought the game kind of lived down to the hype. This was one where Seattle wasn't a wild favorite. They were 4.5, 5-point favorites all week, which for a Super Bowl is sizable, but not something that would blow you away. I think the interesting thing was the number of people, including me, who darn near hit the score. And maybe it was just because the people who did get close were patting themselves on the back, like me, yesterday on social media. But I thought my predicted score was 30-13, ended up 29-13, easily my best prediction of the year. The closest thing, I was terrible picking the Bills this year, but I nailed the Super Bowl. It's like when you play golf, if you end on a birdie, you want to come back for more. I can't wait to pick games next year after hitting that Super Bowl within a 1 point. But I think the point was the general expectation was Seattle had the better team, had the better players. New England probably to some degree was, like I said, a little bit fraudulent getting there, and that the better team, the cream would rise to the top. And it did. The game essentially went, I think, as most football people expected it probably would. The biggest surprise to me was how well Seattle ran the ball on New England. I really thought New England's run defense, which has been really good all year. Remember, the one game the Bills ran on them, Milton Williams didn't play in that game. They weren't at full strength. The Patriots had all their guys for this game, and Kenneth Walker still went for $135, was named MVP. So that, to me, was the biggest surprise. But outside of that, New England's defense did make life difficult on the Seahawks. This was not like Seattle was going up and down the field. This wasn't like the 41-6 demolition that the Seahawks gave San Francisco a couple weeks ago in the divisional round. This was a game where it was 9-0 at the half, 12-0 deep into the third quarter. The Patriots were never really challenging to win the game, but it was a while before Seattle finally put them away. I had a couple people on X coming back at me with different comments saying the Seahawks aren't finishing New England off here. And that was the case for a lot of this game, because as much as Seattle's defense dominated the Patriots, New England's defense played pretty well. Again, they gave up a few scoring drives, but they were all medium-sized field goals. It wasn't like Seattle was driving down to the 3 and then kicking a field goal from there. They'd get inside the 30, inside the 20, and you know, it wasn't even like it was fourth. And there was some people who posted today. I saw one comment that game was an ode to everyone who's ever had a problem with the analytics people, because look, here's a coach that was okay taking the field goal, and analytics people who think you should go for it all the time on fourth down are wrong. There was not a kick in that game where any coach in the NFL was not kicking a field goal. Maybe the last one at the end when it was 19-7 to go from 19 to 22-7, because it was 4th and 3 at the 8. And you can easily make the argument that a touchdown ends the game there. I could see some coaches going for it there as the final nail in the coffin type play. But all the rest of them, it's 4th and 7, it's 4th and 12, it's 4th and 8. There's 11 seconds to go in the half, the third field goal. There was no question that any of those field goals were going to be kicked. I don't care who the head coach is. So to come out there and trumpet it as, look at what you do when you don't listen to analytics and go for it all the time. Taking field goals is smart. Always take the points. Every situation's not built the same. Seattle had pretty obvious field goal kicking choices in terms of down and distance where they were on the field. And the later you went into that game, certainly anything after halftime, you realize that the Patriots were not really going to be a threat. And there was no need for Seattle to push for anything more than just continually stacking threes until the Patriots finally were out of the game or the clock ran out. So this game, although Seattle was by far the better team, they didn't destroy New England, at least when Seattle had the ball. Obviously, the defensive side of the ball, record-tying 7 sacks, defensive touchdown. The Seattle defense was ridiculously good. But the best story of this Super Bowl, I think easily, was Sam Darnold. Not necessarily because of what he did in the game. He was okay. Didn't make any mistakes. Tried to at the end of the half. That throw to JSN right before halftime, Christian Gonzalez got 2 hands on that thing. And if he makes a pick there, I don't know if it changes the game, but it certainly would have felt like the game would have been much different because Seattle had done almost whatever they wanted to short of reaching the end zone in that first half. And if you give 3 points on something stupid, like forcing a ball to the end zone when you don't have to, who knows where momentum, whatever it takes it. But other than that, Darnold did what he had to do. He stayed out of the way, hit a couple passes. The throw to Rashid Shaheed early in the third quarter scoring drive that made it 12-zip was a nice play. He didn't have to do a whole lot because Seattle's defense may be historically good. It certainly was among the best in the NFL this year. But for Darnold to come all the way to this point is an incredible story. I'm sure you've heard it 1,000 times this week. Drafted by the Jets, didn't work out there, traded, didn't work out in Carolina, released, went to San Francisco as a backup for a little while, kind of got rejuvenated, learned under Kyle Shanahan, which helps a lot of people. Then went to Minnesota, won 14 games. A big controversial decision for the Vikings to let him go. I think, I don't know if Minnesota had a good choice there. Obviously, the way J.J. McCarthy's gone, they'd probably prefer to have Sam Darnold back, I'm sure. But it wasn't like it was obvious to keep Darnold. He had been terrible in the playoff games. There were questions about whether or not he could finish. And they had a better economical choice with McCarthy. So I won't destroy Minnesota for getting rid of Darnold, even if it's quite obviously right now the wrong call. But for Darnold to be discarded by 4 teams and then finally end up a champion, it's an incredible narrative, an incredible story. Keep in mind, 4 teams, right? He's been traded or released from 4 different teams. If you go back to the last 20 years of starters in the Super Bowl who've won championships, so take out Nick Foles because he wasn't a starter. Carson Wentz was the starter that year. The other 20 starting quarterbacks combined were not traded or cut by 4 teams. It's 3. Sam Darnold has been traded or cut by more teams than the last 20 starting quarterbacks who've won a championship combined. That's how crazy this is. And Darnold, by just about every account, has been a hard worker, a good teammate. Josh Allen gets along with him pretty well, or at least last I knew he did. That's always a mark in your favor when it comes to judging someone's personality. So there's a lot of people that are really happy for Sam Darnold, and I'm certainly one of them. When you talk to these guys as a reporter all the time, these players, you do realize quickly and get to know them as just people doing a job that's very public facing and has a whole lot of pressure and certainly comes with a whole lot of compensation. But most of these guys are just dudes playing football. And Darnold seems to be one of those dudes. And when you see a guy go through all he's been through, the terrible 3 years in a Jets organization that had no idea how to make him good. A Carolina Panthers organization gave him 1 year. He looked good for like a hot second. And certainly at that point, we're not a team that was prepared to make him better. Having to kind of go through what had to be a little bit humbling as a 3rd overall pick, be a backup in San Francisco, and then come out at the other end and be a champion on this team, even if you're not Tom Brady or Patrick Mahomes level quarterbacking, even if you're a heck of a lot closer to the Joe Flacco, Trent Dilfer, Brad Johnson ilk of Super Bowl champion, to get all the way to the end of that, it's a great story. It really is a cool story. And even though he doesn't have the numbers and doesn't certainly have the hype and had a whole lot of questions before this game, it was, I think, easily the most fun part of this game. The fact that Sam Darnold was the best story of this game also kind of underlines how little buzz this game had. This was not a game that I think a lot of people were super looking forward to. The game not expected to be close was a big part of that. but the star power was low. I heard one of the podcasts I listened to was debating about who the biggest star was from this game. And I think the answer they landed on was Stephon Diggs, only because he's got the connection to Cardi B. In terms of like big transcendent stars, there wasn't much of that in this game. Even the MVP. Yeah, Ken Walker won MVP, and I think most people were fine with that. But the MVP of this game really was the Seattle defense, right? It wasn't just one guy. It was that whole D in general. And that, to me, is the next thing I want to talk about here, because for the second year in a row, we have a Super Bowl champion that isn't led by one of the ridiculous quarterbacks in the NFL, that isn't about scoring 30, 40 points a game, that isn't going to be a favorite of all your fantasy teams. I bet most successful fantasy teams this year, the only Seahawk you had was Jackson Smith and Jigba. Kenneth Walker was fine, but for most of the year, he was a committee back with Zach Charbonnet. And certainly if Charbonnet is healthy, if Charbonnet is healthy and gets the carries he normally would get, I don't know who the heck they picked to be MVP. Maybe it would have been the kicker, Jason Myers. And I know, as a little separate aside, I know people wanted Myers to be, there's certainly some groundswell for Myers being the MVP. And I get it, 5 field goals, record in the Super Bowl. That's a cool deal. But none of those field goals were long. I think the longest one he hit was 41. None of those field goals were really much pressure. Only 2 of them came with the game being within 1 score, the first 2. So I don't see how you get to Myers being the MVP. All he did was not screw up the kicks that he shouldn't screw up. So that I never thought, I get what the thinking is. I never thought he had a legitimate chance to be MVP. Like I said, the real MVP was that incredible Seattle defense. And let's talk about this, because when you think about elite pass rush or championship level pass rush, you think of Myles Garrett and Max Crosby and Micah Parsons, these just ridiculously athletic edge rushers that can totally take over a game by themselves. But the last 2 champions don't have any of those guys. The last 2 champions in Philly and Seattle have come at you with waves of rushers over and over. Every single guy in that D-line is a problem. Last year was the Eagles. Now, the Eagles have some upper-level players too. Obviously, Jalen Carter is an all-pro. They had Milton Williams, who was the number 1 free agent signing of the offseason last year. So in Philly, there are more elite players than I think Seattle has. But the point is still the same, that the teams that are winning Super Bowls the last 2 years, very small sample size, but the teams that are winning the last 2 years are teams that don't need the superstar. In fact, the last 3 seasons, there has not been a top 15 pass rusher or a pass rusher that's finished in the top 15 of sacks who's gone to a Super Bowl. The elite guys in the last 3 years, again, a little bit of a small sample size there. The last 3 years, the elite pass rushers, and measured by sacks, have not gone to the Super Bowl. The teams that are getting to the Super Bowl are the ones that don't have the one great guy, but they have 6 pretty good guys. And I use the number 6 because in Seattle this year, Carl Jones pointed this out on X, great stat pull. The Seahawks had 6 players in the regular season who had 36 quarterback pressures. The Bills had 2. But the real crazy part about that stat is Greg Rousseau, one of the 2, had more quarterback pressures by himself than anybody on the Seahawks. So that great defense, as awesome as it was in Seattle, did not have anyone measured by quarterback pressures who had as good a year as Greg Rousseau, who I don't think any Bills fan would put in the caliber of elite in terms of his pass rushing ability this year. And yet, statistically, he did better than anybody on the team that won a championship, with their pass rush being the focus of that defense. So what does that tell you? For all you Bills fans out there who are thinking, maybe Max Crosby's available in a trade, maybe the Bills can sign Trey Hendrickson, I don't think that's the answer. Now, look, those guys are ridiculous and would 100% improve what the Bills have. And the Bills right now will take any help they can get, not only based on who they've had on this team, but based on the new defense they're moving into, to where any pieces that fit a little bit better than what they have will be a benefit. And Max Crosby, for what it's worth, and we'll talk about this probably the next few weeks. Max Crosby, if you look back through his history, he's only had 2 seasons with more than 10 sacks. As great as that guy is, those 2 seasons were his only 2 years playing in a 3-4 base defense. File that one away. But in terms of what we learned from the Super Bowl, it's not about getting that one guy. You need multiple guys. You need to be able to, on a regular basis, present a front 4 or a pass rush, whatever it is, that only needs to use 4 guys in the rush. And then you drop 7 into coverage and make an offense choose between, do I try and send 5 receivers out and see if my 5 can get open against your 7 while the 5 I'm leaving in to block are having problems because your 4 are that good? Or do I leave extra guys in to block, but now I'm going 4 or maybe 3 against 7 down the field? This is why defenses are winning, because simply put, the math is in their favor. When you can continuously roll out 4 guys that can rush the passer without a problem. And that's what Philly did last year, and that's what Seattle did last night against the Patriots. Super Bowl record tying 7 sacks. How many different guys had them? 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 sacks. I'm sorry, they took one away. So 4 different guys. Devin Witherspoon was one. He's a DB. 3 different defensive linemen had sacks. You don't get to count. But on top of that, you had 3 guys who had sacks. And then Uchenna Nwosu, who had the pick 6. That's also a sack. I know Devin Witherspoon was the one who got there and forced it. Would have had 2 sacks. Regardless, it is the quantity over quality. That's what we should be learning from the last 2 years. 2 years, again, is such a small sample size. I don't want to sit there and say, this is the only way to win a Super Bowl. But it's a big coincidence that I don't think can be ignored. And if you're a Bills fan thinking ahead to, all right, how do we get into one of these games? How do we get to this level? Number one, I think you got to be honest with yourselves that a Patriots team that you played to a 3-point loss and a 4-point win, you're probably not a whole lot better than them. And they had no chance to win that game last night, New England. So I think if you're a Bills fan, you gotta have a little of a come to Jesus moment here and understand that you're probably a ways away. And certainly on the defensive line. But let's look at the Bills roster, okay? If we want to build Buffalo into what Seattle is this year, what Philadelphia is last year, and maybe the even more disturbing part about this discussion is that Brandon Beane tried to do exactly this last year. Remember, he drafted 3 defensive linemen in his first 4 picks. He signed 3 others to sizable free agent contracts and still didn't come close to getting anything like this. All right, that's fine. Brandon Beane's back, new defense. Okay, what are we going to do? What the Bills have already is you have Ed Oliver, who may not be a superb 3-4 fit, but he's such a good athlete, you got to figure he'd be a benefit. And remember, I told you before that Seattle had 6 players with at least 36 pressures. The Bills had 2. It would have been 3 if Ed Oliver was healthy, because Ed Oliver has had at least 38 pressures the last 5 seasons. So the Bills last year had 3 guys who reached the bar of what the Seahawks were in terms of their greatness. Obviously, Greg Rousseau was 1. Ed Oliver would be 2. And Joey Bosa would have been the 3rd. Now, I don't know if the Bills bring Joey Bosa back. He was on a 1-year contract. There's an argument for it. I don't know if he really fits the 3-4, what the Bills want to build. And I think we've seen that Joey Bosa as a run defender is a pretty big liability. So I don't know if he comes back. But the Bills do have Michael Hoyt returning from injury. Hoyt is going to be a big question mark for next year, because while he is going to fit the 3-4 like a glove, he was a guy who earned his big free agent contract by looking good in the Rams 3-4. So he's going to have no problem sliding in to a number of different spots. But is he that elite? Is he a 36 pressure a season guy? So 36 pressures is basically 2 a game, right? Is he a 2 pressure a game guy? I don't know. Maybe. But the concern with the Bills is that after Michael Hoyt, I don't know who you go to. That's probably it in terms of guys that the Bills have on the roster right now that you can look at next year and say, that's a guy that can trouble an opposing quarterback, an opposing passing offense. Rousseau, Oliver, and Hoyt. That lays out to you how far away this Bills team is. Now, does Deion Walker develop a little further and become one of those guys? I think it's possible. Keep in mind, I think Deion Walker's role in this defense is more to be that giant nose tackle that plugs up teams on rush downs. And does he have the gas in the tank left to come back out there in passing downs and give you 36 pressures? I don't think so, but Walker has some ridiculous athleticism that I don't want to put it past him. TJ Sanders in year 2. The guy didn't play in a 3-4 in college. I don't think he's a superb fit for this, but he is a mid-second round draft pick, right? So there's a level of athletic ability that comes with TJ Sanders. So it's not out of the realm. You get some of that from him. Another guy who I think might work for the Bills is Dorian Williams, believe it or not. I think he might be built for that edge rusher kind of, I don't want to say poor man's Micah Parsons. This is like third world Micah Parsons kind of thing. But Dorian Williams, I think, can play that edge rushing position kind of like Parsons does, where it's all downhill, all attacking, all going after the quarterback. So there are some guys on there that the Bills might be able to fit into this role. But again, if we're trying to get Buffalo to the Philadelphia-Seattle level, and right now the bar that we're talking about with Seattle is 6 guys with 36 pressures. Again, I think Rousseau and Ed Oliver are good. If you have 4 guys where you're kind of like squinting a little bit and telling yourself a story to get yourself there, then you're not that close. And you need multiple bodies to come in. And this is a team that's going to have some cap room, or certainly can create a little if they want to. They've got the standard draft complement, certainly early. So you've got some bullets you can fire to try and make this work. But again, the Bills they certainly do need some help at receiver. And they may use one of their giant assets to fix that side of the ball. You've got 2 offensive linemen that are not currently under contract. So you are going to have to use at least some portion of your offseason cap space to fix that, whether it's with the 2 guys that you already have or going to find somebody else. Even though I guess you could make Alec Anderson or Cedric Van Pran Granger one of your new starters without having to burn some of that. But then that raises a whole different amount of questions of either those guys, are those guys ready? So this is not an easy chore. And again, what we've seen from the last 2 years is that you can't fix this with one big swing on a trade. You're probably going to have to do exactly what Brandon B did last year, and it didn't work. Spend a bunch of draft picks on the defensive line and a bunch of free agent spending, a bunch of cap assets on the defensive line, and hope it works. And that process is going to be made a little bit more difficult because you're changing the defense. So even the guys you got, Greg Rousseau and Ed Oliver, who we know have the talent to be that, don't know exactly what their roles are going to be, aren't comfortable with them, aren't familiar with how they're going to operate next year. So I think the big lesson for Bills fans coming out of this game is that it's going to be a while before you have a team that can compete at that level. Now, like I said before, this has only been 2 years of doing this. Is it possible if the Bills go out there and say they grab as a draft pick the next Justin Jefferson? I know that's like pie in the sky is not even probably appropriately selling it. But let's say one of these receivers, and right now I think the general view of receivers in this draft is that there's quantity but not quality. There's not an elite guy. But let's say one of these guys pops and you find Justin Jefferson as a rookie. Is it possible the Bills with Josh Allen and a really good offensive line, no matter who they sign, and James Cook, who's still a really good running back, you put an elite receiver with Khalil Shakir, maybe Dalton Kincaid stays healthy for once, and you can go to a Super Bowl kind of the old school Chiefs way where you're just going to score 35-40 and the defense just has to be functional. Sure, you can absolutely do that. But if you want to do what the Eagles and Seahawks have done, which is, I think, more and more the trend on how teams are succeeding. I mean, you look at the Broncos were built in a somewhat similar way to these two teams. The Rams were not. The Rams had a pretty good defense, but they were certainly, we've got Matt Stafford and 2 of the most ridiculous receivers you can ever have on one team, plus a pretty good couple of guys at running back. We're just going to score you to death. That's their method and their strategy, but it doesn't mean that the Bills can't go that route and succeed. I mean, the Rams were, one play from probably winning a Super Bowl themselves. So, I'm a little bit back and forth on this here, but the way these two teams were built, who won the last 2 Super Bowls, is very notable and something that the Bills are just not close to being at yet. Speaking of not close, I know many Bills fans were excited that Patriots went home without another championship. They now have the most Super Bowl losses ever. They have the most Super Bowl wins, too. They're tied for that with 6, but they are now the only team that has lost, only franchise that has lost 6 championships. Were they exposed? Of course they were. This was a team that got one of the greatest red carpet rides to a championship ever, a historically weak schedule, a round 1 opponent against a Chargers team that was playing like their 7th offensive lineman. They were almost to the point where they were walking into the stands and saying, you come out and get a helmet on. That was their round 1 opponent. The round 2 opponent had their best offensive player suffer a concussion the week before. Nico Collins didn't have to face him. And I know C.J. Stroud is bad. I'm still going to be a C.J. Stroud apologist and say if Nico plays in that game, it might turn out totally different. And I know that sounds like I'm being an apologist. I get it. This is the hill I'm going to die on for now. Regardless, huge break for the Patriots. Then in round 3, obviously they don't have to play Denver's starting quarterback. And they only won the game by 3. I know it was a snowstorm, but I think you can look at that game and say, if Bo Nix is playing in that game, I think Denver wins it. So this is a once in a lifetime type easy run to a Super Bowl, and the Patriots looked like it against the Seahawks. They did not belong in that game. The real NFL championship this year was played 2 weeks ago in Seattle between the Rams and the Seahawks. Now, does this mean that the Patriots did not belong in the game? I don't think so. When you look at what the AFC was this year, they were the team that most deserved to be there. Now, I think when we got to the playoffs, there were 5 teams that I felt like from the AFC could have gone to a Super Bowl. Jacksonville, Buffalo, Denver, Houston, New England. And I remember a month ago thinking and saying that you could pretty much sell me at any of the 5 and I would have bought it. So I guess, is it a surprise that the team that ended up in the championship was simply the one that got the most breaks? If these 5 teams were as close as we thought, and I thought they were, then if one team gets a ridiculous amount of breaks, they're probably the one that's going to go. And the Patriots did. I still think that makes them the most deserving team. They still had to win the games. They still had to execute. The defense this year has been very good, and we still saw that in the Super Bowl. Remember, that defense only allowed 22 points to Seattle. The other 7 was defensive. So this New England defense was Super Bowl worthy. The offense was not. And Drake May in particular is going to take some heat this offseason. Drake May is kind of like Sam Darnold light this offseason for the way he's played in the playoffs, which wasn't all bad. Remember, that guy had 3 touchdown drives against the Texans, who we thought might have been the greatest defense ever invented. So it wasn't like Drake May didn't do anything this postseason, but he certainly didn't do enough. There's a lot of comments today about, wow, why did anybody vote for Drake May at MVP? It looked that bad. It looked that bad for Drake May. But this is still a guy in year 2. He's got time to grow. I don't think you shut the door on Drake May and expect him to never be a threat ever again. But I think what this Super Bowl in particular and this playoff in general did was expose that Drake May is not an elite quarterback yet. Something that was under-discussed all year was how good Drake May was with downfield passing, the 20 yards and more throws. And there is certainly some talent and some skill involved there. But the further away from the line of scrimmage you get, the harder it is to complete some of those passes, and the more I think you can't trust the results you're getting, the more variance you can get in terms of the success. So is Drake May just naturally a really good deep ball thrower? Or did he kind of have a really good couple of months throwing the deep ball that got New England's offense going in the right direction? I think it might be more the latter. But again, it doesn't mean Drake May can't improve, can't get better, and can't still be pretty good as a quarterback. But he was not ready for this level of opponent. The Patriots as a team, especially on offense, were not ready for this level of opponent. Mike Vrabel, coach of the year, who frankly should be ready for this level of opponent, he had a terrible game. What are you doing punting the ball 4th and 1 down 12-0 in the third quarter? Your offense hasn't done anything. I don't care if the ball's on your own 37 or wherever it was. You cannot be punting the ball there in a 12-0 game. What are you going to get out of that? Give the ball back to Seattle and maybe you get a 3 and out and now you can start over again. Would the game what? You lose 3 minutes? You got to start taking some chances there. And then the worst mistake of the day for Vrabel, neither of these ended up biting him because New England was so inferior to Seattle that one or two coaching decisions weren't going to change this game. But what are you doing kicking a point after at 19-6? You get 1 point to get it within 12. If you go for two, you get to be within 11. Now you're a field goal and another 8-pointer from tying the game. There's no reason to kick a PAT there. Even if you miss the two, it's 19-6. You're still within two scores at 13 points. Even if Seattle gets a field goal, you're still within two scores, down 16 points. So for all the criticism that Drake May is taking today, Mike Vrabel did not have a good game and was not apparently prepared to coach his team in a game where they had to be desperate. New England hasn't had to be desperate all year long. Maybe in the Baltimore game, I have to go back and look at it to see how that one went down. But this had a little shades of the Miracle on Ice, and I've watched the Netflix documentary, so that's in my head right now, which is great, by the way. You got to check that thing out. But at the end of that game, when the Soviet Union's down 4-3, and they don't pull their goalie because they've never been behind before and don't know what to do, that's kind of what it looked like with Mike Vrabel last night. And I know he's been behind and should know what to do, but it was that bad. It was that egregious. The punt, you can argue a little bit. The point after made no sense at all. So were the Patriots frauds at the Super Bowl level? Yes. But did they deserve to be there? Sure. Because there ain't anybody else in the AFC deserved to be there. The whole conference was inferior. I saw there were comments about the Bills would have been more fun in that game. Houston, they couldn't have been less fun. So sure. I mean, I think I would have rather seen Buffalo or Houston or Jacksonville or anybody else in that championship because they couldn't have put up less of a fight than what New England did. But I have very little optimism it would have been different for any of those teams. I mean, look at Buffalo. How many times have they faced a defense like that this year? Pretty much Denver and Philly and Houston. Two of those games, the offense didn't look any much better than what New England did. So I don't see Josh Allen and what the Bills had this year rolling into a game against Seattle and putting up much of a fight. It's Josh Allen, so you can't discount it. But that's just what the AFC was this year. This was a flawed conference. We've known it since the middle of October. It looked that way all the way through into the playoffs, and we shouldn't be surprised that the NFC team won going away by 16 points. And I don't think there's much argument about this, too. I think most people who follow the NFL this year, even Bills fans, would tell you, yeah, that's probably how it would have looked no matter who was in that championship game. And just because it was New England doesn't necessarily mean that we look at the Patriots as some decrepit, flawed team that was an embarrassment to be there. They were what the AFC was probably going to put out this season, no matter what the uniform and the helmet and the quarterback and the head coach was. There just wasn't a team in that conference that could measure up with the Seattles and the Rams of the world this particular season. So yeah, Drake May isn't probably ready to be elite. The Patriots certainly aren't a team that belonged in that game, or in terms of a game against Seattle, but being the best team out of the AFC, I think New England at least hit that bar. All right, let's take a break here. When we come back, I want to talk about something I thought was unusual when it came to Bills fans this year. Bills fans kind of bailing on the Super Bowl more than I expected. We'll discuss that after a break. You're watching Rochester First. The kids, of course, they all call it Rock One. I'm Thad Brown. We're back on the Endgame right after this. Thad Brown back here with you on the Endgame here on a Monday. Again, green and blue in the studio today for the world champion Seattle Seahawks. Congrats to them and all their fans. I actually have a friend who's a big Seahawks fan. Got to go see the NFC Championship last week in Seattle. I'm sure he enjoyed himself last night, so congrats to all you Seahawks fans out there who now have 2 championships. That's not a small thing. Very few teams, less than half the teams in the league, have won a Super Bowl championship twice, I believe. So it's not a small thing to have number 2. One of the things that I was kind of surprised at over the weekend was the number of Bills fans who didn't want to watch this game. Now, look, when you're a football fan, I always understand if your team goes to the playoffs, when that team gets eliminated, it's really hard to watch the next round. Doesn't matter what round it is. I imagine Carolina Panther fans who probably had to be overjoyed their team was even in the postseason, weren't really excited to watch the divisional round the week after their team got bounced. And I certainly understand Bills fans this year, after seeing what happened in the divisional round, who were still trying to cope with the idea that the Brandon Cooks play was an interception, not a catch, that their exceptional quarterback just had a bad day on a bad day with 4 turnovers. I get not wanting to watch the AFC Championship game. And frankly, if you missed that game, you won anyway because it was a terrible game. So I understand the feeling as a fan about kind of needing that decompressed period, about how hard it is to watch the next week. I totally get that. And I certainly understand last year when the Bills lost to the Chiefs in the AFC Championship. Not only was the Super Bowl that year a game where the team that you just can't get past, the mountain that's in front of you between you and glory, that never seems to move, that never goes away, the quarterback and the players, Travis Kelce, all the figures that are always in that championship game, that are always the ones that beat your team. When they're the ones that are in the Super Bowl, again, when they're the ones that beat your team in the round before, in a game that was really close, that could have gone either way, to where, again, if you catch a couple breaks, maybe with the refs or a call or a spot, maybe things are different. I totally get Bills fans not wanting to watch that Super Bowl. That had to be a tough one for Bills fans for sure. But I was surprised at the amount of people who weren't watching the game this year. And maybe it was just the people I ran into, the things I saw on social media. Howard Simon, who was a longtime radio host in Buffalo, great dude, just a really good guy. He posted on X that he and his wife were going to watch a movie yesterday, not going to watch the game. I have a friend whose wife was a huge Bills fan, who had no interest in watching the Bills-Chiefs game last year, even though we were all getting together for a party. Same boat this year, no interest. I had another friend who said that he's just not into it. Was going to watch the game a little bit, maybe so much more because his son was more into football in general, but just had lost his interest for the Super Bowl. And the thing about that to me is I don't understand how we get to a point where the team we root for is now starting to control what we do. That because the Bills lost a game, for all you Bills fans out there, I didn't grow up a Bills fan. I grew up a Jets fan. And now that I cover the Bills, it's a whole different world for being a fan. You know, for me, as I explain to people, I'm more worried about how my questions go, how my stories go, how my social media goes on Sunday. The Jets winning is like priority 15. But I get it. Because when I was a kid, I went through the same things. And I was just like many of you, to where if my team lost, Mondays were no fun. Hated to get up the next day. Didn't want to go to school, didn't want to go to work. Totally get it. Obviously, people still go to school and work. But this, with the Super Bowl, seemed to have reached a point where some Bills fans, maybe not all, probably not all, didn't want to watch the game. I don't see why we have to be there. I'm trying to, and I've decided this a few years ago, actually relatively recently, that I didn't want me getting mad about my teams to control me after that, to affect me, to make me feel down. I got tired of being pissed off on Mondays. It's no fun. This is not something that's a part of my life. I don't control this. This is not, my team doesn't lose because anything I did. I just sit there and watch. So I try, and look, it's hard. I get it. I still feel the emotions for sure. But I try not to let that change what I'm doing the next day. Yeah, there might be 15 minutes, an hour, 2 hours where you're mad, depending on the level of the game. But after that, man, just go back to life. This is supposed to be a thing that makes you feel good getting away. And I know when your team loses, it doesn't feel good. But when you're not watching the Super Bowl, which I think most of us want to do, which most of us who are football fans grew up doing, that to me feels like a problem. And I know Bills fans are frustrated their team hasn't been able to finish this. And they may not ever win a Super Bowl. We've talked about it before, that if Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson and Joe Burrow, who are all easily above the bar of being championship worthy, the odds are one of them at least is not winning a championship. Not because they're not good, just because you got so many other good players around you. And as we've seen and talked about earlier in the show, it's really hard to put together a roster, even if you have the quarterback that can win a championship. So if Bills fans are going to get to the point where they don't want to watch a Super Bowl because they're frustrated about their team winning, that to me feels like not the right way to go about being a fan. Now, look, everybody can be a fan how they want. And I think for some people, watching their team is about seeing their team win. That's what you want. That's what you want to get out of it, right? You don't care what anybody else does. You're not here for the sport. You're not here to see, if you're a Bills fan, you don't care what the Panthers are doing against the Bears. You don't care what the Texans are doing against the Titans unless it affects your team. I understand that. And if you want to approach the Super Bowl as, if my team's not in it, then I don't want to watch it, I get that. But I know for the people that I've talked to, for most of the examples I just gave you here, those are people that usually watch the Super Bowl or want to. And I know they're not the only fans out there who are like this. So I guess the thing I'm saying here is I don't think it's the best way to go about it to let your fandom control what you do to that level. And the other thing is, I don't think we as fans have to feel the lows. You don't have to follow your team and get mad every time they lose. And like I said, I didn't grow up a Bills fan, but I am a Milwaukee Brewers fan. So for all you Bills fans out there that are frustrated every January about your team not going to a championship, about getting so many chances, about getting close, about having a team that there at least is a thought they can win a championship, I've kind of been living that in October with Milwaukee. And this year, now, it's different for baseball because the Dodgers have gazillions of dollars of resources that nobody else has. So if you're a team in the National League, you know there's that giant stopping block in front of you, that giant roadblock in front of you that's keeping from World Series. That's different in the NFL where the teams are a heck of a lot closer. Regardless, it ain't fun to see your team lose all the time. But I think I had no problem watching the World Series. I love the World Series, man. It was awesome. It was an awesome World Series. So I don't want to get to the point here where I'm lecturing, and I know I have a tendency to do that sometimes. People have told me. But I was surprised at the amount of Bills fans who were not interested in watching the game this year, assumably because they're frustrated their team continues to fall short. And now, similar to the AFC Championship, this was not a game where you missed much drama, but I still think if you're a sports fan who wants to watch the Super Bowl, I think go watch the Super Bowl. Like, just, again, I think the last thing I want to leave everybody with here is, if you're a fan, you don't have to be mad about this. You don't have to have it impact the rest of your day. You don't have to be mad about your team losing on Monday. You can still live all the good stuff. Enjoy the wins. But man, if you're to the point where your team not being a champion or not winning that game is causing you to do things you wouldn't normally do, I think that's the time you'd want to back off your fandom. That's what I would say. All right. Rachel Liebert is in. It is time once again for another edition of You See This, and we usually only do two things, but today, here you go. Fix yourself up over there. I'm going to put you on camera. Today we're going to do three because there was just more stuff this week. So I will go first with the first one that I got here, and that was Lindsey Vonn, Rach. So she tears the ACL, right? And everybody gets mad about it and says, you know what? I'm still going to ski in the Olympics. I'm going to put a brace on. I'm going to be okay. Maybe okay might be a stretch. And then, I don't know if it was her first race or her second race, but essentially right after, she gets in this accident, and that happened yesterday. It was yesterday or Saturday? I think it was yesterday, right?
I think it was yesterday.
Yeah. Okay. So gets in this accident and ends up breaking her leg, as we found out today, and is now certainly out of the Olympics. And the criticism, even when she wanted to ski and said she was going to ski, was she's got a torn ACL. How can she possibly ski in the Olympics? What are you doing? I saw people who were posting on social media, someone's got to save her from herself. And while I get all that, one would think she has access to proper medical opinions, right? Mm-hmm. So I would hope that she has advice that's explaining to her what she can reasonably do. The other thing about it too, and I'm not a doctor, but from listening to the Bills tear so many ACLs lately, you understand that the thing that's the big concern there, especially when you come back, is being able to cut, move side to side and stuff like that. Skiers don't have to do that, right? I mean, it's just one ride downhill, right? So I would think, as a non-medical expert, that there's an opportunity for her to still survive this. All that said, and we talked about this last week, this is her body. This is her one shot every 4 years. I know she's had about 7 of these one shots, but regardless, it's not like you get another. It's not like there's next year. She's probably done after this. I think she's 41. I don't know if you come back and ski at 45. If she wants to put the knee on the line that much, I have no problem with it. And then the accident that happened was clearly something that was entirely unrelated to the ACL injury.
Yeah.
She catches her pole on a gate and goes down. Now, do you want to argue that if she's not favoring her knee, thinking about her knee, is she more focused? I guess there's an argument for that somewhere. But the idea that this was a controversy didn't surprise me because we live in 2026. But to me, I didn't think there was any business for anyone going out there and saying, you are wrong for doing this. If she wants to compete in this great moment, the only moment she gets once every 4 years, let her go.
I mean, yeah, I agree with you. This is the Olympics. I mean, this isn't just, I mean,
I like how you said
I think
that.
so many people.
It's the Olympics.
Hello?
Right.
Like, I mean, if you have a chance to compete in the Olympics, obviously she's done it before. You're going to push through. And if she's able to do it, she's able to do it. I also saw people saying it was like kind of controversial that she was taking a spot away from an alternate. I mean,
stop it.
Like, this is Lindsey Vonn. She's one of the best skiers that, like, in, you know, the recent, like you said, however many Olympics she's been in. And I don't see any problem with this. It's up to her. I mean, if she feels like she can do it, she can do it. And like you said, too, I mean, this could have happened without a torn ACL. I mean, this wasn't anything with her ACL. Like you said, maybe her mind was somewhere else, and that's why the mistake happened. But I don't see any issue with it. And like I said, like, these are Olympians. Why are we judging what Olympians do? Like, we can't do these things that they're doing. I think we should just let them make the decisions. And that she probably has a team of experts that are like, if you want to do it, it's okay to do it. I mean, you don't really need your ACL for much anyway. So as long as you're not in pain, then go out there and do it.
Yeah, two things on that. Number one, as an Olympian, you get once every 4 years. Mm-hmm. It's a totally different world than our year after year sports. Secondly, yes, she did take a spot away from the alternate. She did that by being faster. That's how it works.
Yeah.
You get to make that call when you get to be faster. Yep. All right. You can go next year with more Syracuse stuff. Is that what we're doing?
More Syracuse stuff. Yeah. And it's never good things. It's never good things.
Well, yes. We talked about that last week. This is the real world for Syracuse. Go ahead.
This one isn't as crazy, though. We'll keep it kind of short. Kyan Anthony, Syracuse freshman, Carmelo Anthony's son, was benched for the first time this season. And it was kind of all over social media because I think he's averaging like 9 points per game, but Syracuse is not doing hot right now. They lost their 6 in the last 7 games. But Carmelo Anthony commented under ESPN's post about his son being benched and basically just said, you know, he'll be fine. This is part of the journey. It's adversity that he's going to work through. Adrian Autry ended up saying that this is just a personal decision, had nothing to do with injuries. It's just he felt like he was the guy to bench this week. A few days prior, though, Carmelo Anthony commented underneath Syracuse's post. And it was like he was just voicing some frustration after they lost to UNC, which, I mean, UNC is one of the best teams in college basketball right now, so not a surprise. But it kind of made me think, Kyan Anthony is obviously nowhere near the level of Carmelo Anthony was his freshman year. I mean, they won a national title, so like
no one is. Let's be fair.
Exactly, yeah. So it made me think, is there a possibility of Kyan Anthony transferring out of Syracuse? Because Syracuse basketball obviously isn't what it used to be, and I know it's the whole legacy thing, and that's got to be 95% of the reason he's at Syracuse in the first place. But I mean, do you think there's a possibility that he's not wearing Syracuse a jersey next year? Because I think there is, because it's not going the way I think maybe people thought it was going to.
I think there certainly is. Can I say that I don't think I'm mad with any angle of this. Mm-hmm. I don't think I have a problem with Adrian Autry benching Kyan Anthony.
Me either, yeah.
Because look, he's grasping right now. He's throwing anything on the wall, hoping it'll stick. And if Anthony's the guy you bench, you give that a run.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with the way Carmelo Anthony handled it.
I think he handled it best.
Yeah, exactly.
Scenario,
yeah. I was, when I first saw Carmelo Anthony commented, the immediate response is, "Oh, here comes Deion Sanders part 2."
Exactly.
That he's going to cause a problem,
yeah.
and he didn't. And he's right that this is a growth thing. I also think it's no problem that if Kyan Anthony says, "The heck with this, I'm out of here," okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
You clearly are not a guy that's that valued in the rotation. It ain't like it's working there. So yeah, I think all these things are possible, and I think Kyan Anthony might transfer with maybe almost nothing to do with getting benched. It's just not a good situation right now. So I almost look at every angle of this and say, I don't want to say shoulder shrug, but I don't think I have a problem without anybody's handling this.
No,
now, Kyan Anthony and Adrian Autry, neither one of them are having a good enough season to where you could look at one of them and say, oh, they got a right to be mad. None of you are doing your job right now in Syracuse. So everybody's got a chance to, or has the door open to being benched, transferring, getting fired, which is probably going to happen to Autry. So, like I said, it's a weird one where I'm like, I think everybody's right.
Yeah, I too want to like do some more research because I don't know much about Kyan Anthony as a player, like outside of obviously him being Carmelo Anthony's son. So I wondered too how much of him being at Syracuse was kind of like a legacy thing, or like how good of a player Kyan Anthony really is. Like I don't really know.
He was highly rated. I mean, it was a good get for Syracuse. I'm sure there was some legacy to it, but this wasn't like Buddy Boeheim being on the team, and he was a good player too, to where it was only because of the dad. Speaking of college basketball, the third you see this from the weekend. This is from Saturday. So Duke and North Carolina rematch in what is arguably the greatest rivalry in sports. I think Jay Billis said that. And at first I'm like, no, you think about it, and then there is an argument for this still. Great game. Now, I really thought Duke was the better team. I watched the whole first half of this game, and Duke, I think, looked significantly better. Carolina didn't know how to run an offense. The only thing that they succeeded with is an occasional three-point shot, and then now I'm blanking. Who's the North Carolina kid who's awesome? You'll probably know, do you? Basketball. No, I know. We're not dialed into NCAA basketball here. All right, hold on. Now I got to find it because it's bothering me.
Is it Trimble right there in that
picture?
No.
Seth Trimble is the guy who hit the game-winning shot. He's not the really good player, though. The elite player is Caleb Wilson. I knew it was Caleb something. Okay. So in the first half, North Carolina's offense was either Caleb Wilson just doing something crazy on his own, or they hit a three. Whereas Duke had answers. Cam Boozer, they just were better off running an offense. And I kind of turned it off after that because it was a 11-point game at the half, thinking, well, either Carolina's going to hit a bunch of threes and steal the game, or they're going to lose. And that's kind of what happened. They were down, I think it was 6 late, hit 3 threes in a row. Seth Trimble has the game winner at the buzzer. I say all that to say, as you can see, as the buzzer beater happens, did you see this? Do you
I
know?
did.
Okay,
I watched this. Yeah.
Okay, so you know what I'm talking about. For everybody who didn't watch it, buzzer beater happens, fans rush the court because the clock had hit 0. But it was pretty clear watching, and tell me if I'm wrong, where you're like, oh, there's definitely time left in this game.
No, for sure. I turned and I was like, there's like got to be like 0.4 seconds. And they put 0.4 back up there. I was like, see, yep, there's 0.4.
Rachel can track time to the 10th of a second.
I knew it, guys. There's a little bit of time left.
So they had to clear the whole court, and it took a little while. To be honest, I was kind of impressed how fast they got everybody off the court.
Me too, because they were talking too. They were like, how are they going to get all the people off the court? And then it was like, oh, they were off the court pretty fast.
And you're figuring there's drinks and beers or whatever. You had to clean all that up, and you saw a little bit. They did a good job cleaning the court. 0.4 to go. It goes as you would think. They tried to heat something up, didn't work. And then North Carolina storms the court again. 2 things about this. Number one, John Shire, who we've seen his picture a couple times already, he said later on that a staffer got punched in the face. Now, he has since amended that to a staffer got trampled. He said he walked in the locker room afterward, and the staffer had a bloody lip, looked like he had been through the ringer, which I'm sure he had been, and got trampled. And John Shire is no fan of court stormings, which, to be honest, neither am I. I have never been a fan of this, and I get it, but I think you're asking for somebody to get hurt. And I know there hasn't been like a death or anything of extended hospital stay, but the point that I'll always make with this, and appropriately, there was a Barstool commentator who crystallized this perfectly, and I am zero fan of Barstool, but the argument was, this is okay because this is what drunk college kids do. To me, the word in that post is drunk. There is no endorsement for kids doing something while they're drunk. I know, I went to college. I have a daughter in college right now. I understand how it goes. I did all the stupid things that everybody else did. They're still stupid. Why are we endorsing them? Court storming is among the stupid things that everybody does. And the only reason we allow it is because there's no practical way to stop it. This is not something that's cool and fun, even it is cool and fun when you were 17 and 18 and 21 and drunk, but it's just a stupid thing that drunk kids do. I don't think it's something that we need to support and cheer, even if we understand there's really no practical way to get in the way of it.
I agree. I mean, like you said, there's just no way to stop it. And I think so much of like, people go into games, I'm sure those kids went into that game thinking, okay, if we win, we're going to storm the court regardless of if it comes down to a buzzer beater 3 to like win the game. I mean, you can't prevent it, but I do think like you said, there haven't been a death from it, but like there very much could be. Like people get trampled, and I think it's too like this happens during football games all the time. But football is so much bigger. Like a field is so much bigger that like you don't really conceptualize it that way. But then you watch these basketball games, and it's a lot worse. But I will say, when I was in college, they were pretty good. Like security, I don't know how they held it down, but they had a pretty good system. Like we never were able to storm the court. Don't know how they held that down. So maybe West Virginia needs to like put out a PSA of like how they
were
did this.
Were they not good at basketball when you were there?
No, we were good like my freshman, sophomore year, and then it's been trailing off a little bit since then. But like there were some court moments. But there was a game actually last year though. I remember that they did storm the court in WVU when I obviously wasn't there. So maybe they lost it, but it was pretty held down when I was there. So I don't know what the protocol is, but it's definitely dangerous.
Even if there hasn't been a death, if I'm someone who works for Duke and I'm going to a game, I don't need to lead with a bloody lip simply because drunk kids could do drunk things. I mean, that's what the argument is.
Kids would do this even if they weren't drunk too.
Well,
like, I think this is
but it's fueled by that, right? And whether, or even we could take the word drunk out of it. It's kids doing stupid things, right? There's no need for it. Why are we just because kids do it? Here's the other part of it too. The thing I think about, and it's happened to me a couple times covering Bills games on the field. When it gets snowy and Bills fans want to throw snowballs, that might be hilarious to you in the stands who are throwing the snowball, but I'm the one down on the field not wearing a helmet. So it's, and I put those two things together in, I get that it's fun and I hate being get off my lawn guy, but I don't want to go to work and take a snowball in the face. And if I'm a guy working for Duke, I don't want to go to work and have to deal with a bloody lip and getting stand on.
I think people just want like the social media moment of like.
I get that. That's not justification.
No, I'm not justifying it.
I know.
This is just what I think maybe is going through their minds.
It's definitely what's going through them. People do anything for engagement these days, right? All right. All right, so I've been nothing but a lecture guy. You missed it, by the way, before you came in. I was Bills fans didn't watch the Super Bowl this year. I was like, why? Like, what? Watch the game. You know, I understand you're mad about your team.
Maybe you're not a real football fan.
Wow, that's harsher than I went to right there. And I felt bad. I felt like I was lecturing everybody a little bit. Like, watch the game. But
I agree. Watch the game. I mean, if you're a football fan, watch the game.
All right. We're done with the lectures and the get off my lawn stuff. This is the most stuffy episode ever of the Endgame. Rachel Liber not involved. This isn't all a Thad Brown production. We'll see you again on Thursday. Thanks for watching. This is Rochester First. Stay with us. We got the news coming up next.
Get the Rochester First streaming app today for everything you love from News 8 On Demand, plus exclusive shows you won't see anywhere else. Search ROC and download for free on Roku, Amazon Fire, and Apple TV.